Now recording. What is up, YouTube? This is your Night Protector Sane here. Stream highlight. We are doing Fe7 because Sane is my namesake, and if you guys didn't know, this is Sane. There he is. That is the guy. That is also the guy who's below my head. Let me take away the... Let's put Glade here. Let's throw Glade up. Let me clean this up a little bit. I'll leave the Pokeballs there, sure, whatever. Alright. This is an Fe7 Lyn hard mode into Hector hard mode tier list. And this is what I think is the correct way to play, because if you skip Lyn mode, you are skipping 10 chapters of the game, which is a third of the game. I don't care if you don't like, ever like that tier, then things drastically change. Like the characters that drastically change in viability when you don't play Lyn hard mode, or when you don't play Lyn mode, are these characters. You don't change that much, actually. You don't change that much. You don't change that much. These characters here all change drastically. You don't change that much either. All of these change very drastically if you do not play Lyn mode. And you also skip a third of the game, so I think the correct way to play, at least in how I'm going to say the correct way to play, is that you play through Lyn hard mode, because otherwise you're skipping things. Fe7 LHM/HHM. Lyn hard mode into Hector hard mode. This is also doing hard mode because the hardest difficulty of the game, where unit viability actually matters, because in not unit viability, or like easy mode, you can use anybody. So that's what this is. Alrighty. I'm just going to do this alphabetical order. Athos is clearly S tier. He carries the last chapter for you. I don't care if he's only in one chapter. He carries the last chapter for you. He's clearly S tier. Barter is a C tier unit. He's a very bad axe unit. He comes at a decent time. His stats are very poopy. He's not F tier, but you have other axe unit Hector, who is just way more useful at that point, and yeah, does not turn out well. Knas is very good A tier. He's a relatively bulky mage user. He's the only dark magic user besides Athos, and Luna absolutely breaks the game. He is not very good stat-wise though, which is why he's A tier. He's very useful. You can promote him early for early staff usage, although he's not the best staff using mage because of he comes with like E or D rank staff when you evolve into druid. But dark magic is strong, and druid's just so good, and Luna kind of breaks the game. So like Luna puts him in S tier, but like the rest puts him A tier. Dart is B tier. He turns out okay. He's not as bulky as he kind of needs to be. He's not as fast as he kind of needs to be. He's not even as strong as he kind of needs to be. Like, he's not that great of a berserker, but he's still he can get RNG screwed, but he's still pretty good. And being a berserker is like solid. But I still think he's another axe unit that kind of just gets outclassed by the paladins. Like an axe user, a better axe user is like Sane, who's a paladin with massive strength, or the heroes. I feel like there's so much axe competition that even though you can like water walk and mountain walk, I don't think it's really there for you. Dorkas is slightly better than Barter, but he's also not good. He's slower, but he has better base speed, so he's actually probably gonna end up as fast. With Lyn mode, you can actually train him to be like pretty okay. For Hector hard mode, you probably still use these units at the beginning because they're like decently tanky at the beginning of Hector hard mode, which is why they're not like F tier. Elwood's swordlock, being a swordlock for a while sucks, and he's not like super speedy like Lyn, so he's kind of just rough until he can promote. But he's like decently bulky. You have to use him. He's not as bad early game as you think, and I almost want to put him in A tier, but I'm still gonna put him B tier for Swordlock. But once he promotes and gets to Randall, he's amazing. He can be so amazing, and he should be 20 no matter what. by the time he promotes. Like you could easily just set him there to like defend Merlinus and get like to like 20 or something pretty close. And when he promotes against Durandal, it's crazy. And I think promoted Elo was honestly worth A tier. Because like once you can promote him, which is not even like, you still got a good chunk of the end game. Once you promote him, then he can get lances, so he can get javelins relatively fast. It doesn't take him forever to get to javelin rank. And just Durandal is so good. And getting on a horse and stuff, I think it's so good. He's actually like decently tanky too, for all of the units you have like the beginning of Hector hard mode. Urk is really solid, and especially maybe he's maybe staying in B tier, I think actually. Urk is really good, especially with Lin mode, even with just like a little bit of Lin mode training. Like the way I play Lin mode is I typically grind Sane out so he can be like as close to 20 as possible and evolve into Paladin and be a pre-promote when I get to Hector mode, essentially. And then I give like Farina a lot of levels. I try to give Urk some decent levels and like kind of get everyone else to like 7-ish or so to balance them out. Urk can end up better than Pence, and is actually a really bulky. Can turn out to be a really bulky mage. And it even in just Hector hard mode alone, you come at a very essential time basically. Chapter 14 and 15 and 16, Urk is so useful for. And then there's like no reason to not really use Urk for anima, because Nino is like no. And Pent doesn't come for so long, so it's like you can use Urk all the way up to Pent, and you can still use Urk and Pence, kind of thing. And Urk just ends up better than Pence. Doesn't break the game like Canas does, but is just overall better, I think. So yeah. Farina is a flyer, and she's really good stats, but she does come so late, which puts her to A tier. But she's so good. Especially if you give her the drops item. What is that thing called? The like thing that like gives you increased stat growths. Because she's not a bad candidate for it. She comes really late, but she's so good, and she's actually pretty formidable when you get her too. She just comes later, and like you might not have room for your team for another flyer, to be honest, because you might want other things. So that's it. Fiora is A tier. She's like around the same. She's gonna end up worse than Farina, but you get her a lot earlier, and when you get her, she's really useful, and a lot of things. So, but she's still just worse. She's like, I think she's an easier to use Pegasus Knight than Florina is, but Florina is just way more like devastating. And especially with Lin mode, getting her a head start when you come in and you can evolve her relatively quickly, she's easily S tier. She can be so fast. Such a crazy dodge tank. So good for like rescue strats. Really, really good. Geets is honestly one of your best axe users. I think Dart, he's like slightly behind Dart. He's a little awkward to get, but if you're like training the lords, I'm not gonna worry about like recruitment for some characters that much. Just kind of like if you get them, somewhat thing. But he's a really solid axe user at that point. He's not the best, and like a trained Dart's probably gonna be better at that point. Guy being sword locked kind of sucks. Kind of sucks, honestly. Let me turn my music down a little bit too. Sorry. Yeah, Guy being sword locked sucks. The high speed is kind of not that big of a deal. He's really weak too. He does not have good strength, and it's just not really. It's not worth using your like Hero's Crest on him at all. He's just really not worth it. Like he's good because he gives you a killing edge and like is helpful for a little bit in Hector hard mode, and you can just stop using him. Harkin heroes are really good. He's really good and usable as soon as you get him. Gives you the Brave Sword. He's got really good like tankiness to him and a good axe rank, and he's like a good axe user at that point. And like he's like a backup, or he's like a backup / fill-in character. Like, you don't make him a main part of the team, but if you have, like, extra slots for a chapter, Harkin's, like, one of the first people you take. Hawkeye. You guys are saying Harkin A tier. Marcus S tier, Pen S tier. Ooh, we'll see about that. Who said something about Hawkeye? I thought I saw somebody say something about Hawkeye. No, it was Harkin. Hawkeye is realistically your best axe user, and is more worth it to use than Dart, just because you don't have to train him. And he's really good, actually. He's like really tanky. Outside of like Hector, he's probably your best axe user, the like main axe user, and yeah, it's way more useful to use Hawkeye than like to train up Dart. A trained Dart can end up being better, but you also have to like take like speed away, and Hawkeye just shows up at a great time for the end game, like later half, like mid slash late game, shows up perfectly, and then he's like slap on axe user, does a lot of damage, tanks really well, can water walk, can rescue. I think he's better than Harkin, but I think he's also kind of like back here. Heath is clearly S tier. Heath is probably the best unit in this game. Actually, he's awkward to use at first, but he's a really, really great candidate for Mifa's drops. What is it called? The drops? I can't remember what they're called. He's a really great candidate for that. He's a little rough to use at first, but with just like a little bit of training with the desert paralog, you can get him to a good spot. Not even 20, you can get him to like 15 through 18 and evolve him there, and he's so tanky. You get the Delphi shield, so you protect from arrows, and even he's so tanky that like even with the arrows being super effective, he's still so good. He hits so hard. He's so good for rescue strats. His one fear is like magic, but just keep like pure water on him or something for mages. He hard carries. So he hard carries and gets disgusting, especially if you give him Mifa's drops or whatever it's called. I'm gonna call it Mifa's drops. Someone correct me, I guess. He's amazing. He hard carries the end game. He becomes like the most unstoppable thing. He's not the best Wyvern Lord in the series. I think like Cormag is probably a better Wyvern Lord but like Cormag's stats are better and FA it's even easier game. But yeah, he's really, really good. Hector is... So here's the thing. This is Lin hard mode and Hector hard mode. In Elwood hard mode, I would be tempted to put Hector in S tier, and he is an essential part of early game Hector hard mode. But then, because he's going to level up really fast, then he's going to cap super hard for a very long time, because he's not going to evolve for so long. Eventually he's going to start getting kind of steamrolled by the levels and like all the promoted enemies you're fighting, and all he really does, and since he's so slow, everything's going to be doubling, so all he's really doing for a good chunk of the game is protecting Merlin kind of thing. Like, he's not doing a lot for you. So he's going in the A tier, and I think he's going to go behind the Flyers too. Like, he's like a premier axe user. He's your premier tank, but there is he hits a hard wall. He is super versatile. Like, Hector hard mode beginning S tier. On like, you have to use him. I still think he's probably the best. I still think he's the best Lord, but then like, he hits a hard wall because you just can't really do a lot with him because it's super late evolution or promotion. Sorry, I've been talking Pokemon for a long time. I've been talking so much Pokemon stuff, I keep saying things. But super late promotion, and then he's gonna be behind in levels too, so it's gonna be hard to catch up. But he's gonna be so tanky that like it doesn't even necessarily matter. But even at that point, he's not gonna be the most impactful unit for the end game. You gotta play a lot of catch up. He's gonna be fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but I think I would have put the mages above him too, honestly. Isadora is super nice. Paladin is the best class in the game. You have the entire weapon triangle. She comes pre-promoted. Her stats are not fantastic, but with weapon triangle and with like A rank and sword and silver sword, she comes with a lot of stuff. Like, she can kind of mitigate her lack of damage. She's really fast too. It's gonna have great accuracy, so she can use axe as well to kind of patch up. Like, yeah, she can use axes to patch up her stuff. Paladin's just good. Like, Paladin's just really, really good. She actually ends up in the end game better than another Paladin I don't want to talk about, but she's still the worst Paladin in the game. Jafar. My headphones are dying. Let me plug my headphones in. Jafar is an interesting one. He's really crazy good. He doesn't come till the end of the game, but he's also can one-shot things, is tanky, strong, crazy avoid, crits a lot of things. I think join time puts him down to A tier, but like he is a monster. He's an absolute monster. He's like the best of these guys, I'm gonna say. He's an absolute monster. Silence is so good. Is it silence or what is it? Silence. I think it's silencer. Or he can just one shot things. He crits. He has such a high crit rate, and then like sometimes those crits, like you can give him a killing edge. His crit rate was like above 50, pretty consistently, and then there's a chance in that he just one shots things, and then on top of that his stats are really good. He doesn't come till like really late, but he's so good at that point, and he's probably the best sword user too. You might not use the what is it, Oven? I can't remember what the like hero relic sword is, or like the really good sword at the end of the game. I can't remember what it's called, but he's good for it. You can even technically use Durandal, I think, right? I don't know. I always just use Durandal on Elwood, but yeah, he's super strong. He's such a good killer. He's an amazing boss killer too. And there's some really scary bosses in the end game. He can like one shot the dragon, and Nurgle, and Sonya, and just other bosses. He's really good. Karel is he's kind of a bad pre-promo. Like being sword locked he's just strictly worse than Harkin. Being sword locked isn't good. He's got like such high crit rate. I guess he's like maybe B tier. No, because even like a trained guy is gonna be better than Karel. He's pre-promote, but he's sword locked, and there's a ton of lance users, and he just doesn't really end up being that great. Carla's awful. She even has a pre-promote that comes stupid late. It's such an annoying recruitment requirement because you have to use Barter, however I'm going to say his name. She's just not even useful, like, at all. Kent is A tier. He's not an amazing paladin, but paladins are so good, and honestly, like, they're so good. He's worse than Sane. He's a little easier to use in the beginning of Lyn hard mode because he's doubling faster, but eventually his strength really catches up to him late game, and he really falls off late game. And like even though he's got perfect weapon triangle to kind of patch it up, it's just still he doesn't like his weaknesses don't get patched as hard as like Sane does. But he's still really good. He's actually probably still S tier. Paladins are so good. If he's the paladin you use in Lyn mode, he's gonna turn out amazing. Paladins are too good. Legolt is sword locked and is probably better because he's got a later evolution than Guy. He's kind of just like utility. But I think he's just worse than Matthew at that point because you're gonna have to play catch up with Matthew unless you haven't been using Matthew for combat outside of like the first few chapters of Hector hard mode. He's not that great for combat. Louise is being bow locked. Bow locked users really suck, but she at least does come pre-promoted and can like do some decent damage, so she's not like F tier. Lowen being a paladin makes me want to put him into the S tier, but he hits such a hard wall. Like so hard of a wall. Eventually, and I mean that because he's going to be really tanky. He's going to have a lot of HP, he's going to have a lot of defense, but he will never double, basically. And his strength is never going to be that high. He's got great base stats. Or optimal use of items. Kind of just everything. Tiers based off of base stats alone. I mean, this was like, I feel like the only time you really need to do just base stats is if you're doing like 0% growth, which Lowen's probably like S tier for. This is just like in general, like how they're gonna end up, how good they are, how you should optimal use of items. Kind of like, yes, I'm gonna say like yes to all of that. Lowen is like, he still could be S tier. He can still be S tier, but I think he's the worst Paladin. Isadora ends up better than him late game because she's gonna have more speed and can like double things, and probably as much strength as Lowen will have. Lowen doesn't get a lot of strength. He's like so tanky and he's like a wall, but he doesn't kill things, and he can't even. Eventually, he can't really two-shot things too. So like late game, he just hits a hard wall, and eventually, he kind of stops becoming useful. As like, he's not your best Paladin. Like, he's still a Paladin, which makes him really, really good. I think he's still probably better than like these fly. Maybe these. I don't know. These flies could actually. Fiora could maybe go to S tier, to be honest. He's kind of like somewhere here. He's really, 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 really useful for the beginning of Hector hard mode, and that's like why I kind of want to put him in S. But I think he just drops so hard, and then like, I mean, you have Marcus to kind of like pull most of the weight there, and then Marcus just ends up better than him, and then by that time, like, not too long after, you get Kent or Sane or both to have other Paladins, which are just better than Lowen, so I don't even think he's that good for that long. Lucious is also A tier. Really squishy, but really powerful and fast, and early promotion for early staff uses, and it can be really good for just physic alone and just being your healer. I think as a healer, he's probably better than Sarah, to be honest. And he's also great offensively, but not as good as the other two, because he's so squishy and can be really awkward, but he's a really good healer too. I kind of want to put him like here. He's really good. He comes a little bit later, like, or a chapter right before Canospa. You can train him in Lin mode, and he's like really good in Lin mode. Even like when you get it, he's gonna hit so hard. Even at like base, he hits really hard, and it's definitely gonna be doubling and one shotting. Like light magic, he's always doubling everything, and he's got the magic growth to back up light magic's low might. Lin is sword locked. She's actually probably C tier, even with Lin mode, like giving her levels. She relies on the Manikati, and if that thing ever breaks, she's kind of done for. I think she's worse than Elwood, because Elwood turns into a Paladin basically and has the Randall to give him the highest strength obtainable in the game, which you can actually hit too. Or Durandal's +5 is crazy. When she promotes, she's good, but like adding bows doesn't really help. She's kind of just stuck with the worst weapons in the game, and she's somewhat of a liability. I would still, like, if you're playing Lin mode, like, give her levels and like train her and stuff, because she is required, and I think it's easier on you because she's required in like the last chapter and stuff to just use her in the last chapter and use the Soul Kadi and the Mani Kadi and things and like Killing Edge. When she's promoted, she's the best swords master you're gonna have in the game. Yeah, she's the best swords master you're gonna have in the game. She's also the coolest looking character. Her sprites, the coolest in the game, but she's not good, really. Marcus is S tier. He carries Hector hard mode. Playing Hector hard mode without Marcus is really hard. And then he's a Paladin, which has perfect weapon triangle, and his stats hold up pretty okay. He's gonna get overtaken. Do a 0% growth run? No, I've seen those done. They look just painful. That just looks painful. No, no way. That sounds awful. I'd only do it if like 3 houses where I could just keep promoting all the time and just give them stats. Sorry, it's such an interesting challenge run, but oh, that doesn't even look fun. It just looks painful. Anyways, Marcus carries through Hector hard mode so hard, and then like as soon as you get the replacement Paladin, which is Kenter Sane if you evolve them in Lin mode, he kind of takes the backseat to them, but he's still a Paladin, which is still the best class in the game. So there's no reason you don't use him, and you can like be your premier axe user or something. Yeah, he holds up endgame really well. Really well. Yeah, I watched a mecha do it, and it's just that's why I was like, it sounds painful. It just sounds painful to do. Matthew is kind of like Elwood. He really carries in Hector hard mode beginning as well. Like, I'd say that the Hector hard mode characters that are going to carry you so hard is like these 5. These 5 are going to do the most work for sure. And he's the dodge tank. If you level him in Lin mode too, he makes Hector hard mode so much easier when it's just him and Hector. And he can almost be like a pre-promote unit because he's going to be so high level. Like, he can be like level 11 and have such good speed and just double everything and be like a dodge tank. He's really useful. And then once he turns into an assassin, if you choose, it's a really late evolution, but like he falls off stat wise, but then he's got the utility to carry him. Stat wise, he and Legolt will end up pretty similar. They're both going to be worse than Jafar overall, so it's not even technically worth evolving them. Which is why he's like still down here in B tier. And I don't think he has. I can't remember if Jafar is the only one with silence or if all assassins have silencer, but Jafar just gets. He's just gonna have better stats. So it's like, by the time you would evolve him, you already have Jafar. So he's been replaced as your assassin and your thief and your lockpick user, and you could even like replace him as just a lockpick user with Legolt, technically. But he carries really hard in Hector hard mode, and it's definitely worth using. Merlin is S tier, sure, of course. Just, why would you not get him? He's utility, so whatever. Nils and Indian S tier 2, they're dancers. I always use them. Always use them. Yeah. And then you have like the rings. They're the same characters because you always have one at the same time, but they share levels and everything. It's dancers. You just get to make a unit act twice. Like it's yeah, easily S tier. I kind of want to just put them in utility. Slash. Can't silence the dragon. You can't. Not like Silent Staff, like Silencer, like the one shot. Is it called Silencer, or am I forgetting that? What is it called actually? What is it called? The signature skill. What is it called? Is it lethality? No, that's what it's called later on. What is it called at the beginning? Like Fe7. It is Silencer. I've definitely one-shot the dragon before. Can you not silence it? You can't silencer it? I've definitely one-shot it. Oh. No, it was Nurgle. It was Nurgle. I one-shot, and then he just like hit a crate with the Brave Sword and killed it, so that's what it was. But he silenced Nurgle. He silenced Nurgle, which is still... Yeah, still great. Yeah, these guys are utility S tier. Just use them. Like, there's no reason not to. Nino is the Est, but she's going into F tier. But she can turn into a god. If you decide to use her, she turns into a god and is actually better than Athos. But she's so difficult to use, and it's kind of like a handicap to use her, and it's just like you have to put so much effort into it. So she's technically F tier. I almost just want to have an S tier. I would love to have her in her own tier. I don't think I'm going to do that. This is the S tier. The Est archetype. For those who don't know what the Est archetype is, it is a character that joins usually late, has really bad stats. Not always late, but has awful base stats, but insanely high growth rate, and it's really low level. So you have to baby them to get them to level up, but once they catch up and once they're like high level, they become absolute monsters because of their like stats. Like they're gonna have massive stats. Like she's gonna have incredible stuff, like incredible magic, incredible resistance. She's gonna blow things up. Really good speed too, especially if you give her Aphis drops. That's what's called Aphis drops. If you give her Aphis drops, she turns into a complete monster. But you have to feed XP. You have to like stop all your game plan. You kind of have to like for this efficient run. I guess that's another something. I guess like for tier lists, like this isn't low turn count. It's not even like highest rating. It's just like the most efficient run, like playing at a relatively good speed. I guess typical playthrough of like trying to beat it as efficiently as possible. And Nino doesn't do that. No Est character does that except for like Ross and Fe8 and like Est in some games, like Est in Echoes. Oswin, being a general kind of sucks. Oswin bounces between here. He's another one that carries like Hector hard mode. He's one of the 6, even more than like Lowen. But he hits a wall even harder than Lowen because he's gonna be a general and he's gonna be move locked to like 5 move, and giving him boots is not worth it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Give boots to like a flyer who can now move like 10 spaces. Like, give boots to, like, Heath, who can now, like, run, like, 10 spaces. Like, that's why you should use boots. You should not give it to Oswin. So he's, like, another Hector hard mode carry, and he's not bad to promote. Like, he's going to be really tanky and really strong. Slow, but, like, he's still going to be able to, like, do a lot of damage more than, like, Lowen. And you've got lances and axes, so you still have, like, what you need from the weapon triangle. But the movement just sucks. It really slows him down. So like he could maybe be A tier. He's either the worst A tier or the best B tier. He's like right in between there. So do it with how you will. Pence is insanely useful when you get him. Pre-promote that hits really hard magic wise and as physic, which is super useful. But he's not always needed. He's not always needed. That's the thing. For like speedruns and stuff, he is. Can you do Cog of Destiny in 5 turns? Yeah. Like, can I personally do it, or is it doable? I know it's doable. It's like with like warp and like I think you give Heath the boots or Farina the boots or something like that. You can do it. You just warp her straight over and like put her in the mount. Warp your flyer over, put him in the mountains, and then like 2 turns later they go in 2-round Lloyd or Linus. If I remember that correctly, I just can't remember exactly where in the mountains they go. I think they have to have the Delphi shield too. Which I think you have at that point. Can't remember. But Pence he's like great for endgame physics. He's great for endgame magic damage dealer if you didn't train up like Urk or Nino or even Priscilla. Because Priscilla's usually more of a healer. He's amazing for like LTC, no turn count, because he comes with warp and comes with physic and is really useful. He's super good, but you might not need him if you've been training Urk up. Urk is probably gonna end up better, and you probably won't need him. And even like Lucious too, you might not need Pence, but he's so good. I'm gonna put him like right here. He could be S tier for like LTC, but there is also like there's just a chance that you don't need him. And maybe I should put him in S. I don't know. He's kind of a hard one. Like I want to like part of me wants to put him in S, but I'm also just like, well, you can have a better Pence than Urk. And I wouldn't even say it's like, well, if you use Urk, you're taking experience away from other characters, because it's like, no, not really. Because you're going to have Urk a lot in Lin mode. You can train Urk really pretty high in Lin mode, and then it comes at a point where you don't have a ton of units, and you kind of want Urk anyways. You kind of want to use Urk anyways. But Urk can also get stat screwed, and Pen could just be way better, so he's super consistent. I'll also throw him in S tier, because even if you are using Arc, even just being there for like really strong physic and like warf, he could just be like another healer at that point. So I will still put him in S tier. LTC, he's like crucial. Also, he's one of the coolest characters ever. He's really good, but he's not needed. Not necessarily needed. You can definitely get around like not. He's not needed. I kind of don't. I'm gonna put him at the top of A tier. I'm gonna put him at the very top of A tier. Because if you trained Urk and like Lucious up, even just one of them, he's not needed. And he kind of becomes a secondary character. But if you didn't, or for some reason they're dead or not as strong, like he's consistently always just gonna fill that niche perfectly, but you might not need it, kind of thing. So it depends. He's really fun to use though. Like even if you are using Urk, there's no reason to not use Pence still. There's not no reason, but there's still plenty of reasons to use Pence. So he's like I'm gonna put it at the pinnacle of A tier. Priscilla is the only mounted healer, but she's kind of hard to level up. And at that point, you can already have pretty close to that. You could have Lucious evolved and have Physic already. And so even with the mounts, you're still playing catch-up as a healer, which is kind of rough. Like I feel like FE7, the best healers are the attacking mages, which is like Lucious and stuff. It was just GBA. I feel like if you had her near the beginning of the game, she'd be way better, because like giving XP to healers takes a while, and she's really useful. But she's also just kind of hard. Like you can kind of replace her with another healer, and at that point, yeah, I don't know. I feel like Lucious is healing, and Lucious and Pence, like healing wise, staff using wise, just overtake Priscilla, unless you do train her up. Well, she can be really, really good. She can be super, super good if you train her up, but it's gonna take you a long time. She's kind of like Nino. She's almost an Est. She's gonna take a lot of grinding, because it's hard to level healers a lot. You heal like every turn, and she takes over for Sarah at that point as your healer, realistically, unless you've gotten like a ton of XP on Sarah from Lin mode. Even then, Priscilla still probably takes over, just because it's safer to use her since she's mounted. But it's a hard catch-up game. You have to play a hard catch-up game, and at that point, like, you can evolve Lucious and maybe Urk and like Kanos and Pen later. So by the time she's promoted, and like when she promotes, you're stuck with fire for a while, and it's not gonna do a lot of damage because her magic is good. But yeah, I think she's B. Who's the best unit between FE7 and FE8? What do you mean? Who's the best unit between, like, if both, like, counting both games, like, who's the best unit in both? Like, I take the best unit from FE7, I take the best unit from FE8, and I compare them and say who's better? Is that what you mean? Because the answer is Seth. The answer is Seth. Seth is the best unit. Because he has insane growth rates as a paladin. Seth solos that game, and Seth overall. Yeah, Seth. Seth is like the best unit in Fire Emblem history. I can't think of someone better than Seth. Robin and Awakening. Robin and Awakening's better. Because Robin gets stupid. So stupid. But yeah, Seth and FE8 would be, or Seth and FE7, where he has axes as a paladin, would be even better. Wrath, you're bow locked, but you're on a horse, and then you get swords, which isn't really great, but you're on a horse. He's probably the best sword or best bow user, but you really don't need bows, like, at all. You really just don't need bows. I'd put him above the axe users, maybe. He kind of does come late too. If you use him in Lin mode, you can, by the time he rejoins in Hector mode, you can probably evolve him, though, and he's on a horse, which puts him above, like, most of these guys. He's probably above Lin, honestly. If you want to use a bow user, Wrath is your best choice. Just because of the mount. And he's another mounted unit. But realistically, I don't think you use him. I think you just don't. I think you just don't use him and give Or like Lin mode is where you just start, you narrow down your characters that you use to give as much XP to like Farina and whichever whichever cavalier you use between Kent and Sane, and then you get some of your mages up. I don't even think you use all of the mages. Like I usually tend to use Farina, Sane. I give Sarah stuff, of course, and I get Matthew a couple levels. I get him some decent levels. And then I kind of just feed Sane as much as possible, to be honest. Even when I've done runs where I use Kent instead, I just feed Kent as much as possible. I try to get him to 20 if I can, or like 18 at least. And I feel like there's just not. I feel like using Wrath or Dorkas or like Will just takes away XP. Because Lin hard mode is not hard. It's not that challenging. Like Sane just kind of solos it, to be honest. He actually does just solo it. Raven's S tier. He's so good. He's so good. He his growth rates are like Lord level. His base stats, hard mode doesn't give him like the most incredible base stats, but it still gives him good base stats. You get him at a perfect time, because the prologue chapter, the pirate chapter, which is probably my favorite chapter in all of Fire Emblem history, is perfect for getting him catch-up XP. He's not even that far behind, and he's really useful. You can argue that Ike was purposely designed to be overpowered. I think he's really only overpowered in Radiant Dawn. Path of Radiance, he's not even that good. But Raven, he's kind of like turns into a lord, so he's gonna have like perfect time to play catch-up XP. And so he's not even sword locked for that long. Once he evolves into hero, you put him just straight on axes, and he's like your premier axe user, and he turns insane. I think he's better than Kent, even though he's not as good as Farina. Honestly, Farina needs to come up. And Farina's above Marcus. Put it like here. Athos is the bottom of S tier, by the way. Just because the availability thing. You don't actually need Athos, but he's guaranteed for the last chapter, and like, why not use him? Just put a physics staff on him if anything, and just like fight with him. But yeah, Raven, once he turns into a hero, he's tanky, he's really fast, he does a ton of damage. He wave clears really easily. He player phases and enemy phases really well. With swords, he avoids so much, and with axes, he kind of just mainly uses axes and then give him like a killing edge. He's so good. He's super strong. He's so usable. Like he is who you use your hero crest on. You don't use your hero crest on anybody else. Everyone else is in C tier. He is the one you use your hero crest on. He's easily S tier. He's one of the strongest users in the game. Rebecca, F tier. Bow locked and foot locked is just really bad. That's really bad. She's fun to use. And Will's fun to use too, but they're just bad. Renault is like he's the last unit you get basically. He's like a strictly worse Athos because he's locked to light magic, which he's not going to do a ton of damage with. He's got crazy high resistance, so he can like be useful for some fights, and then he's kind of like an emergency healer. Excuse me, emergency healer. I think I'll put him in B tier. He's like a late game emergency healer, like physical user. Kind of that's all he really does. Yeah. It's kind of like all he does. Sane is S tier. He's the best unit in the game. He's the coolest character ever. He is the best character in all of video game history. If you disagree with me, you're wrong. In actuality, though, he is the best Paladin. And I'm going to put him above Raven. And I'm going to put him above Marcus. And I'm going to put him above Farina. And here's why. I'm going to explain why. There is definitely some bias behind Sane, but I've played through this game so much and I've used him so much that I've seen how he averages out. And how he averages out, he level caps his strength very fast. So at early levels, and even in Lin mode, he caps his strength, which means that 60% growth. So the way growth rates work in FE7 is unlike FE6, you are not able to not get a stat raise. In FE6, you can technically get a level up where you don't have any single stat raise at all. He's got 60% growth rate on his strength, so he's going to cap it really fast. Likely, like very commonly, he caps his strength very fast. And then when he does, for the remaining levels, he's now forced to get a level up in something else. He has moderately not the best skill and speed, although speed he's like pretty average on, so he'll catch up and you can like give him speedwing or something later on, and he can even use like swords or lances instead. He's got a lot of might, so like he's got a lot of strength and a lot of constitution, so he can wield really heavy weapons. And even if he doesn't double, he's gonna one-shot things because he's gonna get such high strength so fast. And like once he caps out his strength, he essentially starts waterfall. His level up growth rates kind of start waterfalling down because he can't grow his strength anymore. So now he has to get a level up in at least one more thing. And then there's like another chance that it's like when you level up, it's like a dice roll for if you get a stat raise. It's a percentage roll if you get a stat raise. And at the very minimum, you have to get if everything rolls 0, something gets re-rolled. There's like another dice that rolls to make sure one stat gets raised, and that's in Fire Emblem. So it's like every stat rolls. If everything misses, there's an emergency like 9th roll, let's say, that picks a random stat to give a stat increase to, and it's like weighted. So like it's most likely going to go to strength because it has the highest growth, and like HP. So he has to get at least one thing. And when strength caps, that emergency roll cannot go to strength anymore. Now it has to go to something else, and it just kind of like helps patch him up. Also, he just ends up really like average in a lot of stats, which is good. Like he average speed in Fire Emblem 7, where enemies are not that fast. He's gonna be doubling. His skill is very patchable because you get a couple secret books. So if he's like not doing great, he's a great candidate for those secret books because he's a paladin. Has perfect weapon triangle, has great bulk, incredible damage output. He's just like carries so hard. And if you evolve him with the Knight's Crest you get from Wallace in Lynn hard mode, which is what I recommend doing. You get a Knight's Crest from Lynn hard mode because you don't actually have to use it on Wallace, and so just train up Hector Saint to at least like 15, if not higher. You can do higher. Even without like grinding hard, I've gotten them to like 17, 18 consistently. Just use that one character and use as much as you can for those 10 chapters. You get them up to 18, and you evolve them, and then essentially a level chapter 17, when they come back, they're basically a pre-promo, and they're stronger than Marcus would be. That's how I recommend using him. And then he's so good. He's so good. Strength, capping out, perfect weapon triangle, best class in the game. Good stats around. Like he can kind of struggle with, because he can kill Fargus. You know who can kill Fargus? Will. Sarah. You're gonna want to use Sarah, but she's gonna get replaced as a healer even more than Priscilla, because Priscilla's gonna replace her as a healer. But I'm still gonna put her in B tier, because if she's gotten a lot of levels, if you've been kind of forced to play slower, and she's been healing more, she could get levels. And by the time she turns level 10, evolve her basically immediately. She doesn't have very high strength growth or magic growth though, so she's not even gonna be the best physics user because she's not gonna have the most range on it, and she wouldn't be the best attacker. So I think she's like kind of the worst healer. I love her. She's really fun. I love her as like a personality and character and stuff like that. But as a unit wise, I feel like she gets replaced really really quickly. But like Lucious, like as soon as you evolve Lucious, you have like physic and stuff, so she gets replaced really quickly. Vita is the other Wyvern Lord you can get, and she's a really late game pre-promote, but in the best class. And there's nothing wrong with grabbing another pre-promoted Wyvern Lord. She's like here. She's like with the other pre-promotes. I kind of have them all grouped here. I'm gonna pull Market. I'm actually gonna pull Hector down, because Lucious just for healing is so useful. I think she's the worst pre-promote here. I like all these guys. I feel like their join times and their role fillers, like sword user fills the role of sword user, fills the role of like axe user that's not a paladin, fills the role of flyer, but you've already got your other flyers at that point. But it's kind of just another flyer. It's a really good class. She's really tanky and stuff. Wallace sucks. He sucks. He sucks. He's bad. He's really bad. General joins super late. Should not be evolved. So he's a knight. He sucks. Generals just suck. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's not C tier. Maybe he's not F tier. He's like the worst C tier character. He's really bad. And then Will. I love Will. I love him so much. I think my like real life personality is more Will than it is Sane, to be honest. I love him so much, but he's bad. Bolocked is bad. He's a little bit tankier than Rebecca. You get him earlier, so he's easier to train. So he's not playing as much catch up. So he's not like doesn't have to be babied as much. He has higher strength than Rebecca. So like a steel bow, and he's got higher constitution, so he can use a steel bow more effectively and do more damage to like knights and stuff. But being bow locked and being foot locked is really rough. It's really rough. If you want to use a bow user, use Wrath, and I don't even think you should use a bow user, like at all. Honestly, when you use a bow user, use like Geats, really. And yeah. So in a playthrough of Fe7. I recommend you use S tier characters. Only use one of these two paladins. I recommend you use Sane. But if you want to use Kent, go for it. Use all the S tier characters. Use most of the A tier characters. Use about half of these guys and kind of just like however you could fill the team, whatever you're missing on the team. And then these B tier characters, like these guys up here, use them for like early Hector hard mode. I think those early chapters that can really suck. Until you get a lot of your team members back. And then C tier, don't use unless you really want to. F tier, don't use unless you really want to. And then Nino, if you want to use S, she can turn out crazy, but she's kind of hard to use because you have to XP grind her a lot. And yeah, that is Fe7. Thanks for tuning in, guys. That's going to end the video, and it's going to end the stream as well. Hope you guys have a wonderful night. Thank you for tuning in. I love y'all. Subscribe to the channel because it's free and it gives me a number that is higher than the current number it's at, and that makes me feel good inside. If you don't subscribe, I'm gonna cry. Love y'all. See you later.